Nuclear energy policies. If the Chernobyl disaster had not occurred, the trajectory of nuclear energy policies around the world would likely have been significantly different. The accident dealt a severe blow to public confidence in nuclear power, leading many countries to reconsider their reliance on this form of energy generation. However, in a hypothetical scenario where Chernobyl never happened, nuclear energy might have continued to be regarded as a cornerstone of nations, could have accelerated without the specter of Chernobyl hanging over the industry. Additionally, the absence of the disaster might have mitigated concerns about nuclear proliferation, as countries may have been more willing to share nuclear technology and expertise in a world where public perception of nuclear energy was more favorable. Systemic flaws and bureaucratic inefficiencies of the Soviet regime. However, without the catalyst of Chernobyl, the pace and nature of political reforms under Mikhail Gorbachev's leadership might have unfolded differently. The disaster served as a wake-up call for Gorbachev, prompting him to accelerate his policies of glasnost, openness, and perestroika restructuring in an effort to address public outcry and regain legitimacy. In a world where Chernobyl never happened, Gorbachev may have faced less pressure to implement sweeping reforms, potentially prolonging the longevity of the Soviet Union as a superpower. The absence of Chernobyl could have, however, in a hypothetical scenario where Chernobyl never occurred, the ecosystems of the affected regions would have been spared the ravages of radioactive contamination. Wildlife habitats would have remained intact, allowing populations of plants and animals to thrive without the specter of radiation poisoning. Agricultural lands in the vicinity of Chernobyl would have continued to produce food without fear of contamination, ensuring the livelihoods of local communities. Furthermore, the absence of Chernobyl's environmental devastation would have prevented widespread health issues and genetic mutations observed in affected populations, preserving the well-being of future generations. Nuclear safety standards *. The Chernobyl disaster prompted a global reassessment of nuclear safety standards and emergency preparedness measures. In its aftermath, governments and regulatory bodies worldwide implemented stricter regulations to prevent similar accidents from occurring in the future. However, without the catalyzing event of Chernobyl, the urgency to strengthen nuclear safety protocols may not have been as pronounced. In a world where the disaster never happened, the pace of progress in nuclear safety standards and technological innovations may have been slower. This could have left nuclear facilities vulnerable to accidents and increased the likelihood of nuclear proliferation. Additionally, the absence of Chernobyl might have dampened public scrutiny of the nuclear industry, potentially allowing for laxer enforcement of safety measures and poverty alleviation. The absence of Chernobyl's economic burden would have allowed governments to invest more heavily in productive sectors of the economy, stimulating growth and prosperity. Additionally, industries that were negatively impacted by the stigma associated with the Chernobyl brand, such as agriculture and tourism, would have thrived without the specter of radiation contamination hanging over them. Technological advancements. The Chernobyl disaster spurred innovations in nuclear reactor design, radiation detection, and emergency response systems. However, without the impetus provided by the catastrophe, progress in these areas might have been slower. In a world where Chernobyl never occurred, researchers and engineers may have had less incentive to develop new technologies aimed at improving nuclear safety and mitigating the consequences of accidents. This could have left nuclear facilities more vulnerable to catastrophic failures and hindered the advancement of the nuclear industry as a whole. Additionally, the absence of Chernobyl's technological legacy could have deprived future generations of valuable insights into the risks and challenges associated with nuclear energy. Public perception and activism. The Chernobyl disaster had a profound impact on public perceptions of nuclear energy and galvanized environmental activism around the world. However, in a hypothetical scenario where Chernobyl did not happen, the public perception of nuclear power might have been more favorable. Without the specter of a nuclear catastrophe looming large in the public consciousness, governments and industry stakeholders may have faced less opposition to the expansion of nuclear energy. This could have resulted in greater investment in nuclear power plants and accelerated the transition away from fossil fuels. Additionally, the absence of Chernobyl's environmental devastation might have dampened the fervor of environmental activism focused on nuclear issues, potentially altering the course of energy policy debates and investment decisions. Cultural and artistic impact. The Chernobyl disaster has inspired countless works of literature, film, art, and music, reflecting on the human tragedy and environmental devastation it wrought. However, in a world where Chernobyl never occurred, cultural expressions of nuclear anxiety and existential dread might have taken different forms. The absence of Chernobyl's haunting legacy would have deprived artists and creators of a powerful source of inspiration, potentially altering the cultural landscape of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Additionally, the absence of Chernobyl's cultural impact could have reshaped public attitude trajectory of Cold War politics and nuclear arms control negotiations. Additionally, the absence of Chernobyl's catalyzing effect on global cooperation and diplomacy might have left the world less prepared to address future nuclear crises and environmental challenges. Lessons learned and preparedness, and transparent communication during emergencies. However, in a world where Chernobyl never occurred, these lessons might have remained unlearned, leaving nuclear facilities and communities at greater risk of accidents and environmental disasters. Additionally, the absence of Chernobyl's legacy of preparedness and resilience could have left the world less equipped to address future nuclear crises and other existential threats. In summary, the Chernobyl disaster left an indelible mark on history, reshaping policies, perceptions, and technological developments related to nuclear energy. Imagining a world without Chernobyl offers insight into the profound impact of technological disasters on society and underscores the importance of learning from past tragedies to build a safer and more resilient future.